The Nintendo Switch 2 is finally here, and alongside its reveal, we got to see a brand new console Mario Kart game for the first time in over 10 years. We only saw like 15 seconds of this thing, but the reaction has been insane. In only a couple of days, it immediately clicked as to why Nintendo might position this as a launch title. It didn't just send ripples through the fan community, but to casual audiences as well. Everyone is dying to get their hands on a new Mario Kart. And the game itself, from the little we've seen, looks to be pushing the franchise in a completely new direction. The 24 racer confirmation has everyone freaking out, but the sheer expanse of this course, in spite of it clearly being an early one, has me certain that this game is going to feel truly fresh. But a new Mario Kart game doesn't just mean looking to the future, it also means taking a glance at the past. Retro courses have been a series staple since DS, taking tracks from previous entries and bringing them up to the caliber of the current game's roster, or at least trying to. And with so much of the Switch 2's hype surrounding just how big of a technical leap it is for Nintendo, this might be the most exciting selection in Mario Kart history. Aside from 7's maybe. 7's was really good. So, now that we actually have a game to predict for, I'm throwing my hat in the ring and attempting to nail every retro track that'll appear in the Switch 2's new Mario Kart. Note that obviously, those dozen seconds of footage aren't doing much in the realm of hinting, so we'll be doing our best to figure things out based on the series' trends, current direction, and of course, a little bit of wishing thrown in there just for the sake of personalization. Can't call it a Protendo prediction without a sprinkle of misplaced confidence. With all that said, let's get started. Couple of things I want to bring up before we get into my picks. First of all, I'm predicting that Mario Kart for Switch 2 will launch with 48 tracks. The series is bigger than it's ever been. It's grown beyond the standards of what it looked like 2 decades ago. So while the 96 tracks of 8 Deluxe and the Booster Course Pass might seem like a ridiculous number to hope for, the 48 tracks of 8 Deluxe itself seems far more reasonable. This means we have 24 retro tracks to predict across 6 cups. I'm gonna make the bonus 2 the Moon Cup and the Spiny Cup. They feel like fitting enough additions from the Booster Course Pass. Secondly, I'm not predicting any Mario Kart Tour tracks. Regardless of how mainline Nintendo might consider the entry, these don't strike me as courses that'll be returning anytime soon. One of the main points of 8 Deluxe's DLC was immortalizing these tracks so they don't eventually join the Lost Media Club, and with that mission completed, I don't see a point in bringing them back, especially right now. We'll be looking at Super to 8 Deluxe for our retro selections. And of course, we're kicking things off with the Shell Cup. First up, Daisy Hills from 7. Being the second course in the game and having yet to return on Nintendo hardware, this seems like a very safe pick for an early retro track. Mario Kart 7, being one of the newest entries, has some of the most unused courses available to choose from, and while I don't think that's quite as important as it used to be, which we'll get into later, I still think we'll definitely feel its presence in this new game. Evidently, Daisy Hills is a pretty simple track, but the idea of driving through a town is always fun, and feels like it can become even more involved on next-gen hardware. For our second pick, we've got Toad's Factory from Wii. This is a track whose absence was strongly felt in the Booster Course Pass, likely one of the most requested that didn't come to fruition. To me, it felt obvious that they were saving this beloved course and its very unique theme for the next entry. People always talk about how original it is, but personally, the main reason to bring this one back is to hear the new rendition that the Mario Kart band would cook up. I need it badly. As our third, we have Mushroom Bridge from Double Dash. This track did return in Mario Kart DS, but you couldn't even drive on the side of the bridge, so what was really the point? Personally, I'm ecstatic to try and line myself up with the arch while 23 other players do the same. Seriously though, there's a lot that could be done with this track in the time since it last appeared. The tunnel leading under the mountain could be flooded, or the aforementioned arch could reward you with some flight pads at the top that let you swoop down to the finish line. Not quite as satisfying as staying on the rail the entire time, but what is? And to close out the Shell Cup, Luigi's Mansion from DS. It came back in 7, sure, but Luigi's Mansion didn't have a 14 million seller back in 2011. Honestly, I feel like this one's coming back solely so that Nintendo can tease just how pretty the next Luigi's Mansion game is gonna look. And in a just world, they let me race through this track as Professor Elvin Gadd himself. I don't know if this is a just world. We'll have to wait and see. Moving on to the Banana Cup, we've got Mario Circuit 4 from Super to start us off. This is the only Mario Circuit from Super Mario Kart that's yet to return, and one of the only original tracks that's yet to be remade, excluding the track's reappearance in Super Circuit. To me, this feels like a lock. Nintendo always likes to throw in some less interesting courses when making their retro selections, and personally, I'm all for it. Look at what 8 did with its Mario Circuit of choice. We got an Ultra Hand Ramp for some reason. I can't wait to see what a game that's bound to be even crazier does with its more formulaic tracks, even if this one is heavy on the formulaic. Next up, Yoshi Desert from Super Circuit. Desert courses in Mario Kart are never really my thing, but it feels like you always need at least one to fill that retro thematic quota. In fact, we haven't gotten a retro selection without a desert track since the game that introduced the concept. Just like Super Circuit's starting to run dry on tracks that have yet to be remade, so Yoshi Desert feels like a shoo-in in that regard. At least it has a pretty strong visual identity. It'd be great if they found a way to integrate the Yoshi Sphinx into the actual track design without shifting it too badly. As our third, we've got the newest track in this entire roster, Squeaky Clean Sprint. This was one of the sole courses completely original to 8 Deluxe's Booster Course Pass, and it made an incredible impression while there. Ridiculously dynamic and thematically rich, it'd be a shame to see this one left behind without getting brought to the visual standard of a base game Mario Kart track, a standard that inevitably just got way higher. This choice might lean more on wishing than predicting, but I don't see anything stopping Squeaky Clean from having a quick turnaround, especially since a 2-year gap between entries would be far closer to the series standard than the 11 years the rest of 8's courses would have. And finally, we've got Wario Shipyard from 7. This one's great. One of the first tracks in the series to make underwater driving feel like a truly worthwhile addition. I'm gonna interrupt this section for a second to bring up something that'll be pretty relevant to this course and the rest of the video. I think anti-gravity is almost certainly coming back. Even if we ignore this part of Mario Bros. Circuit that we saw that absolutely looks like you need anti-grav to drive on, this is a series feature I think it's tough to get rid of. I know that some people are probably tired of it after 11 years of 8, and it doesn't always do the most for gameplay, but purely from a design standpoint, I don't see how you abandon it after seeing how limitless creating courses became. Anti-gravity really isn't about completely shifting the gameplay experience, it's about presenting the Mario Kart team with the opportunity to pull off some of their craziest ideas. Without it, you don't get to drive up a waterfall, or zoom past leaks on the side of a dam, or do anything that Mute City allowed for. So yeah, even if we're in this new era, I don't expect this feature that made the series a whole lot bigger to go anywhere, just like gliding in underwater segments didn't magically disappear when 8 came around. All this to say, imagine how cool Wario Shipyard would be if you got to explore an enormous, nearly vertical sunken ship that was peeking out of the water. Give it to me now. Starting off the Leaf Cup, we've got another one of the newest courses on this list, Yoshi's Island from 8 Deluxe. Unlike Squeaky Clean Sprint, this is one I feel pretty confident we'll see return based on its creativity alone. It might sound ridiculous to say that a course made for a player base of 65 million was wasted, but I'ma say it, I don't want this thing to stay shackled to a decade-old game. Yoshi's Island is revolutionary, man. It should be revived to pave the way for even more spin-off themed courses. Suddenly my dream of racing through Bowser doesn't seem as far-fetched. This is an original track that's currently locked to paid DLC. Getting it in a base game should be top priority. And looking at the emphasis placed on animation fluidity that we've seen in our glimpse of this new game, it's hard to imagine a track that could benefit more than the intentionally cartoonish Yoshi's Island. Banshee Boardwalk from 64. In the time since its return in DS, I think we've seen technology evolve to a point where the spookiness could be truly amped up. Not to undersell what Nintendo was able to accomplish with their older hardware, but I feel like tracks like this that are designed to create a specific mood more than anything could really benefit from some improved lighting. Those pitch-black surroundings of the original are definitely effective, and I feel like that concept could be pushed even further with better contrast from the hanging lanterns. And an underwater segment. I mean, it's a boardwalk, kinda goes without saying. Next up, Koopa Beach 1 from Super. Just like Mario Circuit 4, this is the only Koopa Beach iteration yet to return, and one of the few SNES tracks yet to be used in a retro roster. Feels like a safe bet solely due to its absence to this point. It could be ignored in favor of some of Super's other remaining choices, but I don't see any of them beyond the two I mentioned being particularly likely. Vanilla Lake could happen, I guess, I don't know. And as our closer, we've got Coconut Mall, which opens us up to another relevant side tangent. Two things I want to mention. First of all, I don't think a retro track being unused is as important as it used to be. The fact of the matter is that the series is simply running out of untouched retro tracks to pull from that also hold a certain level of intrigue or importance. Super's got 9 options if you count each individual raceable track, 1 option if you discount the themes already brought to other entries. 64 has 1, Super Circuit has 5, Double Dash 4, DS 3, Wii 4, I'm not counting Tour here by the way, a lot of them go down if you do. And mind you, most of these aren't tracks the devs are dying to bring back. They had their first picks in previous entries and are now left with what remains. Circuit tracks, thematic repeats, rainbow roads they don't yet plan to use. Some bangers left over for sure, especially in the later entries, we've covered some and have others coming up, but at the end of the day, I don't think the new Mario Kart's retro selection is going to be defined by the scraps that remain out of some sort of obligation. Secondly, even if we do assume that being recently unused is some sort of benefit, I don't think the Booster Course editions hold as much weight as the mainline entries. These tracks were pulled from Tour, and Tour itself was positioned as a sort of Mario Kart's greatest hits compilation. I don't think getting a mobile version of Coconut Mall, one of the most iconic tracks in the series, cleaned up for a DLC pack, is gonna stop Nintendo from creating a true reinterpretation representative of the multiple generational leaps we've had since its last console appearance. To sum that up, Coconut Mall is popular, SNES Bowser Castle 2 is not. I think I know which one takes priority. Alright, we're halfway through our selection and fully through our tangentially related speculation rants. Hopefully. Let's get things back on track with the Lightning Cup, and our first course, Shy Guy Bazaar from 7. Another sort of desert track, but one of the most distinct that Mario Kart's ever seen. Just the fact that it's set at night gives it a completely different feel than its competition. And obviously, the bazaar portion itself provides the interesting set piece that most desert courses are sorely lacking. I feel like the concept here could be pushed even further on new hardware. Imagine having to weave in and out of different stands, avoiding baskets and other smaller obstacles that could be launched and scattered around as you and 23 other players make your way through. It's one of 7's most unique courses that hasn't been brought back in any non-mobile capacity. I'd be shocked if we don't see it on Switch 2. Waluigi Pinball from DS is next and falls under the same principle as Coconut Mall. The Booster Course Pass brought back almost all of the most iconic tracks that 8 missed. I don't expect all of them to get ignored this time around just because they were there. Picking what might be the 2 most popular courses in the series might be a little bold, but on the other hand, it's been 11 years since a new Mario Kart. I think they're gonna want a winning lineup alongside the more unorthodox picks. And speaking of unorthodox, we've got a track that's been avoided in its entirety for 2 decades, Wario Coliseum from Double Dash. No retro appearances, no Booster Course Pass inclusion, no Tour Edition. Honestly, I think they're kinda scared of this one, and maybe reasonably so. But all the more reason to bring it back. As far as raw potential goes, Wario Coliseum has some of the most of any remaining untouched track. This expansive journey of a course feels like it was made for a modern Mario Kart rendition, and I'm just waiting for the game that's brave enough to handle it. In fact, with the track needing to be expanded to accommodate 24 racers anyway, maybe just turn it into a crazy single lap adventure like Mount Wario or Mute City. They did it with N64 Rainbow Road, they could do it here. And as the Lightning Cup's final course, Cloud Top Cruise. Not only is it thematically fitting, but Cloud Top has always felt like one of the tracks that defines Mario Kart 8 the best. It feels like an adventure. Each portion is distinct from the last while still staying connected through a prevailing sky-based theme and overall ambition. Even after 2 different sets of DLC and an additional 64 tracks being added to what was once base Mario Kart 8, Cloud Top Cruise still feels like one of the grandest courses in the game, and by extension, Mario Kart history. Hard to think of a better choice to bring back. Alright, now we're starting to wrap things up. 2 cups left, our bonuses if you consider the series' former standard. And I'm kicking things off with a controversial pick to the less enlightened of us, Baby Park from Double Dash. I'm not here to argue. If you can't see the value in having an 8 racer, 12 racer, and 24 racer iteration of this track, you have so much to learn. It's sad to see so many people still don't understand the essence of this masterpiece. Baby Park isn't about avoiding the chaos, it's about becoming one with the chaos. Once you understand this, things will be better for you. Up next, DK Jungle Parkway from 64. Another retro track that got brought back in Wii, but I feel like we've got to hit our DK quota somehow. This one's got a lot to work with. It even has one of those early Mario Kart, oh my god, I can't believe this wasn't always a gliding segment jumps. Its specific sunset jungle theming is actually really unique, and the bridge, cave, and background boat all feel ripe with potential to expand upon. Heavy on that last part. I want to be able to race that boat underwater, or do tricks off of its rotor waves or something. Make it happen, Nintendo. Broken Pier from Super Circuit is our third, and after seeing how well Boo Lake got done in the Booster Course Pass, this one actually excites me. It's yet to be brought back in any game, tour included, and I feel like it's perfect for a more ambitious reimagining. I only hope that more is done to preserve its very unique aesthetic. I'd love to see a modern take on this specific color scheme and atmosphere brought to life. Some extra verticality could also do it some good, but I feel like that's a given when talking about reviving older Mario Kart tracks. And as our cup closer, I'm taking a swing that I'm fully willing to admit will likely be a miss, Maka Woohoo from 7. I'm gonna be real, I don't think Nintendo's super interested in acknowledging Woohoo Island right now, but man, would it be a shame to let this course rot on the 3DS. I have this vision in my mind that I can't get rid of that final portion of the track where you're just free gliding into the sunset, except it's all pretty and expansive and you have 24 racers all aiming for the finish line, and it's beautiful. Maka Woohoo is a track that still feels extravagant in a post-8 world, and yet that extravagance could be pushed so much further by a game and system willing to pay it even more respect. I just don't know if this is that game or system, but hey, sometimes you need to throw a Hail Mary. We can mourn together when it doesn't happen. Finally, the Spiny Cup, and I'm tired of waiting. Airship Fortress. People got bummed out when it didn't come back for the Booster Course Pass, but I am above such things, because I recognize that the only reason why Nintendo would keep such an incredible banger of a course away from us was because they were planning to bring it back later in spectacular fashion. Few retro tracks feel like they would benefit more from the increased scope this new Mario Kart seems to have. Weaving between the bullets, getting launched from the cannon, spiraling down the tower, imagine what anti-gravity alone could do for a course like this, let alone this game's new surprises. And everything I said about Toad Factory's music applies tenfold here. I need that new rendition yesterday. I need that new rendition last week. This is non-negotiable. If I can't boot up my Switch 2 and start a new race with that legendary something is seriously wrong. Rounding out 8's presence in the retro lineup, we've got Electrodrome. This is another track that feels like a lock to me, if only because Nintendo themselves seem to love it. I remember this course being all over 8's original marketing alongside Sunshine Airport, and it makes sense as to why. Visually, it holds up to this day, and its aesthetic was unlike anything Mario Kart had ever attempted to that point. In the same way that Music Park felt like an easy prediction for 8, Electrodrome feels like a safe bet this time around, even if I attest that the tracks are actually very different. I would love to see how its high energy gets pushed even further. Bowser's castles really don't get remade as much as you'd expect them to. The only ones that have gotten retro iterations are the ones from the first 3 games. So I'm gonna be bold and predict that the Wii's version will get its chance. I'm not sure what makes this one so compelling of a choice to me, maybe the fact that it's one of the only interesting Wii courses left that's remained completely untouched, and the Booster Course Pass made it super clear how much they love Wii pandering. To be fair, I too would love pandering to 37 million sales. Anyway, Wii Bowser's Castle is still a great choice, and an incredible penultimate course in a Retro Cup. I'd love to see how they'd expand upon the main Bowser statue centerpiece. I feel like the half-pipe has to stay an option, but adding some additional methods of dodging those fireballs with new mechanics would up the intrigue even further, especially since the half-pipe area itself would need to be wider to accommodate all those additional racers. And to close out our 24 tracks, we've got Rainbow Road from Super Circuit. The safest bet to make, given the trends we've seen from 7 and 8. This really isn't that crazy of an iteration. I'm patiently waiting for our Double Dash Rainbow Road remake, but I'm still super interested to see what a Switch 2 version of this track would look like. They turned N64 Rainbow Road into one of my favorite tracks in the series in 8, amping up the congratulatory wonder to such a degree that you feel all warm and cozy just from racing on it. And while it's not to the same extent, new iterations of SNES Rainbow Road are definitely enjoyable, maintaining the tight turns and making it incredibly fun to speed through. I'm sure Super Circuit's Rainbow Road will reach a similar standard set by its competition, especially if they keep the Paper Mario Bowser's Castle. Let's just hope it isn't the best Rainbow Road in the game. They have a lot to prove this time around. Mario Kart for Switch 2 has existed for less than a week, has less than 20 seconds of footage to its name, and still has me ridiculously excited. I'm already craving our next look at the game, but in the meantime, I'll be holding on to these predictions as my own personal expectations. Hopefully Maka Woohoo comes to fruition. But, as always, I'd love to hear what you think. Were my guesses out of line, or right on track? And which courses are you hoping to see in the Switch 2's new Mario Kart? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you all later.